Welcome.
That was, yeah. I can be whoever, you know. Used to be I used to go to Birds, pardon? Crazy Birds, yeah. And there was a girl there that would always call me Earl. And she'd go, "Hey, Earl." And I'd say, "It's Mark." And she'd go, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." Next time I'd see her, she'd say, "Hey, Earl." I'd say, "It's Mark." And then I finally just, she started saying, "Hey, Earl." I go, "Hey, how you doing?" Anyway, I'm Mark. I'm alcoholic. How's everybody doing tonight? You look like a real lively bunch in here, you know. I drank a lot of alcohol and I used a lot of drugs. This last April the 29th, I celebrated 34 years of sobriety. And 2 weeks ago tonight, or today, I turned 68. So, and I know I don't look it, but anyway. So I've been sober half my life, and that's a big deal for me. And I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to try and chronologically tell my story because along with being 68, I kind of forget stuff and I can mix it up, and so I'm just not going to do that. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about what it was like, and I'm going to tell you what happened, and then I'm going to tell you what's been happening since. And like I said, my story, I'm a blackout drinker. I mean, once I start drinking, I can't stop. But I've never drank a drink of alcohol. I don't care what it is, beer, wine, hard alcohol, mixed drinks. Never had one that I liked the taste. I mean, that's me. I have friends that, oh man, beer and pizza. I mean, no thanks, man. If I'm going to eat pizza and I want something to drink with it, it's going to be a Coke or it's iced tea. I drink for the effect. And since I didn't like the taste, I'd down 2 or 3 of them pretty quick, and then you can't taste it. But once I start drinking, I can't stop. And I, got in wrecks. I had 3 wrecks that I made at home. I woke up the next day and looked at my car, and my car was wrecked. And to this day, I don't know what I hit. But I've also, gotten in wrecks where I didn't make it home. I had some of the local authorities help me from that point on. But anyway, what I'm going to say is my story also includes drugs. And, if that offends, and I know this is a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and if that offends you, then you need to talk to that guy that asked me to speak, because he knew that I was going to mention drugs, okay? I believe this today. I've never met an alcoholic or a drug addict that does not have a case of low self-esteem. I've never met one. And I think that we get that, like when we're little bitty kids. And I think well-meaning people give us that. I know I grew up in a Southern Baptist church, and, I was told that I was a sinner. Like when I'm a little bitty kid, I am a sinner. And and things in the Southern Baptist Church. I mean, man, you can't drink, you can't smoke cigarettes, you can only have sex if you're married and in very limited positions. You can't dance, you can't shoot pool, you can't, that just, there's all this stuff you cannot do. And, a lot of it, if you do partake in that, there's a real good chance you're going to go to hell. And and that's what I was taught. And not just doing it, I was also taught that if you just think about it, that's damn near the same as doing it, and you're probably going to go to hell with that. Anyway, so I grew up like that. But when I was 7 years old, my oldest brother got killed in a car wreck. And my mother, and I had a great mother. My mother was a saint. But today I cannot blame my mother for this. I have no idea what the pain is to lose a child. I do not know that. And, I hope and pray to God I never know that. But anyway, what I think my mother did, and I was the youngest, and my mother, I think, just kind of cradled me in. And she was not going to let that happen to me. And I can remember being referred to as Little Mark. And, when I was in junior high and it came time to go out and play football or to go out for the team, my mother wouldn't let me do it. Little Mark might get hurt. And so I grew up with that stuff. And, and I'm 68 now, and I was probably 12 then. So the fact that I still remember that, it must have happened. But when I found alcohol, alcohol made me good enough. Alcohol made me big enough. Alcohol made me tough enough. Alcohol made me extremely handsome to the ladies. And alcohol made me a race car driver also. And I loved, once again, I didn't like the taste, but I loved the effect. And, if I'd walk in the bar sober, I can't play pool, I can't dance, I can't talk to the ladies. Give me a few drinks. I'll shoot pool with the best of them. I'll dance all night. And the girls, I'll probably get in trouble for this, but all the girls look prettier at closing time. So, and honestly, the girls probably think all the guys probably look better at closing time also. But, I loved that lifestyle. And then, it started changing. And my thinking was I've just built up a tolerance to it, and I need to drink more. And then I started getting pulled over for the way I drove. Now, I was born and raised in this town. Grew up here, started drinking and using here. I got sober here, and I've pretty much been here ever since. But back a long time ago, I was doing 70 miles an hour up Montezuma in a Pinto, and a cop pulled me over, and I got out, and I knew him, and he looked at me, and he goes, "What are you doing?" And I told him, I said, "I'm just drunker than shit." And he asked me, he goes, "Can you make it home?" And I said, I think I can." And he said, "Then get there." Another time, I pulled into the driveway. I got out of the car, and there's a cop car blocking my car in the driveway. But he's my neighbor. My neighbor's a cop, and he looks at me and he goes, "If that car moves again tonight, you're going to jail." So, I mean, I got a lot of breaks like that. But, things started changing. My drinking was getting worse. I got in a wreck one night at the same place where the guy pulled me over, and I told him I was drunker than shit. Same curve. It's on Montezuma when it curves around before you drop down to where Safeway is. Right there, I was passing an RV, and I'd been smoking opium and drinking beer all day. And I was passing an RV, and I hit some old man and old lady. And there was a gas station. There still is one there, but back then you could go inside. And, I thought, man, I'm going to get in trouble here. So I had an ounce of pot, and I took that, and I stuck it down my pants. And then I walked over to that gas station, and I bought a can of soda, a pack of certs, and a pack of gum. And a cop, just, I guess, on his beat, just happened to be driving by there while I'm in the gas station. And I walk out, and I was driving my first wife's car when I did this. And the license plate flew off of our car. And the old man I hit, I came walking, I'm going to be cool, I'm chewing gum, and I'm walking back out to the wreck. And the old man's walking around with my license plate going, and then he goes, "There he is." So, I that night I blew a 3-2, and they wrote me 4 tickets. One of them was the DUI and the 3 other ones. But they handcuffed me. This is the gospel truth. They handcuffed me behind my back, put me in the back seat of that police car. And back then, they did not have the molded, one-piece seat that they have nowadays. It was just a regular seat. Handcuffed. I have no idea how I did this, but I got that ounce of pot out of my pants, in my mouth, and I start chewing on it. And I think, if I swallow this, I'm going to choke to death. I spit it out and stuffed it behind that seat of that police car. 2 weeks later, I get pulled over again on East Gurley. And I blow a 2.9, and I get a DUI for that and speeding. So now I got 6 tickets, 2 of them DUIs. And I think those levels are extreme nowadays, But and you know how we are. We're manipulative. We know how to work people. I knew the judge. I sold the judge firewood. I went to see the judge. And I said, "Man, I'm coming before you with 6 tickets." And I said, "I think I might have a drinking problem. And is there something I can do before I go to court?" And he sent me to the West Yavapai Guidance Clinic. And I had a meeting with a counselor once a week in a room, at least to you and over to the wall and back up to here. And it was just a counselor and I. We were the only 2 in there. And once again, I would buy I was working in the Verde Valley. Come on in and sit down, folks. We already passed the plate, so we can pass it again here in a little bit. I'm working in the Verde Valley, and I get off work and I buy a 6-pack of beer and drink it on the way to my counseling. But I just stayed. I never got up close to him where he could smell that on me. And he eventually wrote the court a letter and told him I had completed the whatever it was I was supposed to complete there. And what he told me was just drink 2 or 3 and quit. Okay, the judge sentenced me to 30 days in jail and suspended it, took my license away on a Friday and gave it back to me on Monday. I paid a $250 fine. They put 1 DUI on my record and dismissed all the other charges. And, needless to say, I did not stop drinking and driving. I just did not get caught again. But, booze, me drinking, and, things started happening like I couldn't get out of bed to pee. I'd wind up peeing in the bed, or maybe I'd get out of bed and I couldn't find the way out of the bedroom, and I'd be peeing on the wall, and some other nice stuff like that. I remember Janis Joplin, I believe, and I think Jimi Hendrix both died from throwing up in their sleep, and they choked to death on it. And so I'm smarter than them, so I go to bed and I train myself to sleep like this. And so anyway, I don't know why I got to Alcoholics Anonymous. I can't tell you that today. I know where I went. I believe I made a phone call, and they invited me to come down. It was probably intergroup or something like that. But where Grove Avenue meets Gurley, there's it's a T there. You have to go right or left. You can't go straight. Up the hill is a building, and that's where I went. Yeah, it might have been a Lano Club up there. Probably was. But I remember when I got there, there were 4 men in there. And I would tell them what happens when I drink. And they did not tell me to drink 2 or 3 and quit. They told me what happens when they drink. And they invited me to an AA meeting that night, and I went. And it was at the VA, and I believe it was in the old domiciliary at the VA. And after that meeting that night, I quit drinking for probably somewhere around 4 years. I just started using drugs every day. And I was proud of that. I mean, people would say, something to me because I use drugs the exact same way I drink. I owned a lumber yard, and I started the lumber yard myself. I developed it. First year it did $1 million in sales. Second year it did $2.25 million. Well, I got all this cash coming in. I'm in the bar one night. I'm not drinking, but I like to hang out in the bar. And a guy turned me on to some cocaine. And I bought a half a gram of it, and it kept me up till 4 o'clock in the morning, and I had to be at the lumber yard at 6. So I brought it, what was left, can you believe that? Something was left of a half a gram. Anyway, I brought it to town and gave it away. 2 weeks later, I run into the same guy, and I buy a gram, and then 2 weeks after that, I said to myself, I've done cocaine 13 out of the last 14 days. And then I don't think I missed a day for several years. And one of the worst things that I remember driving home, I know right where I was when I had this thought, that one of the worst things about cocaine was coming off of it. And, and I had all this cash flow, so I just said, I just won't come off of it. And, but my thinking is I'm going to maintain, right? Do just enough to, and it was a great drug because, it energized, and it did all that stuff booze did for me, man. It made me big enough, made me tough enough, all of that. And, I got pulled over all kinds of times, high on cocaine, and, I'd say, yes, sir, I'd sign the ticket, and, you don't have that odor on your breath. But when cocaine quit working, and I was snorting this, okay, and I had like a 5 to 10 gram a day habit, and there were days when I'd do a lot more than that, and I learned a long time ago not to put it on my gums, but my sinuses got infected from it. I could just be standing there, my nose would start bleeding, or I'd have to put hydrogen peroxide in my mouth and when I would do that, it looked like I had rabies, this foam would come out. Some nice stuff. A little different than peeing on the wall, but still nice. Anyway, and a friend of mine said, well, why don't you smoke it for a while? And I thought, well, that's a good idea. And I drove to Tempe. I don't know if any of you guys probably, you and your brother maybe know Tempe years ago. There was a head shop on Mill Avenue called, say it? No, shit. It'll come back. Anyway, doesn't matter. There's this huge head shop. It's bigger than this room here. I'm driving a 5,000 turbocharged Audi. I park right in front of the head shop, and I walked up to the counter, got my dark glasses on and a white straw hat, because I'm cool, right? And wearing gold and diamond rings and gold necklaces, and it's the 80s. But I walked up to the girl and I said, I want to buy everything I need to make and smoke freebase cocaine. And she looks at me and she says, we don't sell anything like that here. And I'll never forget, I backed up, I took my glasses off, I looked at what they said. They had everything under the sun. Pipes and bongs and tons of cut. All this stuff. And I walked back up to her and I said, well, if you don't, just who the hell does? And I left, and she let me know it was the wrong terminology. I needed to ask about an oil pipe. And I left there that day with everything. I even had a book. They sold me a book about how to make it. I left there that day with everything I needed to make and smoke freebase cocaine. I would have to use for 2 or 3 days to get as crazy as I would get in 2 or 3 hours from smoking base. And what happened is I developed like drug-induced psychosis. I lived in Groom Creek on a dirt street. And I'm looking across the street and I see these, I'll tell you a couple of stories about what happened, but I saw these long-haired kids siphoning gas out of my neighbor's car. And I called the sheriff and told him. And I'm watching out there, and then the sheriffs don't show up. And then now I see these kids, they're at my house. I have a 6-foot chain link fence all the way around my house. One of them is straddling the fence. One of them is in my yard, and they have my car jacked up like a race car. And when I tell this story, I can still see this, okay? My car's jacked up like this, and they're taking my tires and wheels off and handing them to the guy straddling the fence, and he's handing them down to to the guy that was on the outside of the fence. And then they took the bumper off my car. And so, and then, well, come on in and sit down. This is the A&A. Did you know that? I know him. Anyway, so I get back on the phone. Oh, and there's a girl sitting in the driver's seat with a gun pointed at me. So I call the sheriff's back, and I go, where the hell are you? I said, down there in my yard, taking parts off of my car. I said, they got a gun, and I've got one too. I said, somebody's going to get shot. And, they got there pretty quick after that. So I walk outside, and I look at my car as I'm walking outside, and there's nothing wrong with my car. I have 3 big German Shepherds, and they're just like laying there. They're probably not going to let anybody take tires off of my car. But I know I saw them siphoning gas out of my neighbor's car. So we walk across the street, and it had rained, and it was a dirt street, and there's no footprints around my neighbor's car. And I'll never forget, the cop, he has a yellow pad, and he turns to me, and he goes, what's your name? Date of birth? He goes, do you think somebody's after you? And then I spent, I don't know how much time after that. I could be 10 miles out in the middle of nowhere, and they'd be after me. My last time out, I had maybe a month and a half sober. And what would happen to me, guys, I spent 2 years getting, 30 days, 45 days. I could never get 60. What would happen to me is, if I got 45 days, I'm eating, I'm sleeping, I'm going to these meetings, I'm hearing everybody talk, because I didn't come to AA to get sober. I came to AA to rest up. And I came to AA because if I can't drink and use, man, I'm not going to have any fun, nowhere to go, no friends, nothing to do. I don't want to do that, but I don't want to keep making a fool of myself either, And so my thinking would tell me that I could go out tonight. And if I got 45 days today, I'm going to go out tonight, and I'm not going to do it like I used to do it. My God, I've learned for a month and a half now. And when I go back out, and I'd take either the first drink, the first hit, both, whatever, I could not stop. And so my last time out, I bought a 1/4 ounce of Coke, drove over to the old Alano Club, parked in the parking lot, was out there using it, and I took the plastic off my cigarette pack and put some in it, rolled it up, put it in my sock, just in case I need some more before that meeting's over with. I'm in the meeting before it starts, in the bathroom, using cocaine. And I've had a habit of doing that around this town, the Catholic Church and a few other places. But so I came out and I sat down, and they picked a subject of honesty. And I said, what am I going to say if they call on me, man? And I got up and left, and I went to a bar, and I closed the bar down. And I drove my truck over into the Mountain Club. They were chasing me. Back then, any car that was anywhere, they were after me. And I got out, and I started running. And anybody go to the meetings at Park Avenue at the church? You know where that is? Well, there's a creek that runs down along Copper Basin Road. And I was running down that creek carrying that in my hand. And they're chasing me, right? No, and I knew they were just waiting for me to stop and use some so they could arrest me, or they were waiting for me to throw it down so that they could arrest me. And that was the first night of a 3.5-day binge. Okay. Now I'm going to move forward. I went back to AA. And I'm at a meeting. I'm at the Prescott group on Wednesday night. And there's a little old woman in there. And she talked, man. I mean, there was just something about this woman that was magical. And, you know, I mean, she was sober a long time. And she had, you know, been through a lot. And after the meeting, I wanted to talk to her, but people just congregated around her. And I remember I went up and just reached through the crowd and touched her. And then I left. And that reminds me of that story in the Bible when they had a sick guy. They couldn't get him to see Jesus, and they touched Jesus' garment, and the guy was healed. You know, I mean, it reminds me of that. Anyway, a couple weeks later, I see her at a restaurant after the meeting. We always used to go out to the restaurants after the meetings and have coffee. And she had been to a meeting that night, and I had been to one, not the same. But I got the opportunity to talk to her. And she gave me her phone number, and she told me to call her. And I did. I called her. And when I called her, I had 4 days clean. And she invited me to come over, and I went over. And I told her, I've spent 2 years, relapsing. And she told me, she goes, I'm going to make you a deal. You're welcome at my home anytime. All I ask is the next time you feel like going back out, you come talk to me first. And when we're finished talking, if you still want to go, you can go and you can still come back and I'll still be your friend. And I kept that agreement. And I wanted to tell her, lady, you don't know what happened to me the last time I was out. You don't know the things that I saw and the things that chased me. I will never touch that stuff again. Took 10 days, and I'm ready, man. And on the way to her house, I said to myself, we're not going to talk about the weather. We're not going to talk about anything except the fact that I want to go back out, and then I'm gone. That's the deal. But what happened when I got to her house and I started, because anytime I felt like going back out, guys, I didn't ever talk to anybody about it. And as long as I keep it in here, it makes sense. But as soon as I started talking to a sober alcoholic, it started to not make sense. And what I got to experience was the magic that happened, I believe, between Bill W. and Dr. Bob. And what happens today. One alcoholic talking to another one. And the desire to go back out that night left me. I got to go home. I got to eat. I got to sleep. I woke up the next day. I had whatever money I had. And I'll tell you, that did not cure me, okay? I had to make many trips back to her house and tell her I feel like going back out. And today, there's a speaker, a guy named Scott Redmond. He's passed away now. But he used to say, if you're an alcoholic and you got a plan, no, he'd say, if you're new and you got a plan, don't use it. And I've changed that today. Today, for me, it's if I'm an alcoholic and I have a plan, doesn't matter if I'm new or not. If I'm an alcoholic and I got a plan, don't use it. I need to talk to somebody about it because things will make sense to me. That maybe when I start verbalizing it, I see Levi over there kind of smiling. I think he knows this, but when I start talking to a sober alcoholic about it, my plans start to not make a lot of sense. Okay, like I said, I've been in this program a long time. Had lots of things happen. And I want to tell you a little bit about about doing a fourth and fifth step, and then eighth and ninth. And what I'm going to say about the fourth and fifth step is that, and I'm going to tell you this is about the steps. First meeting I ever went to, the steps were on the wall because I'm a little bit faster and a little bit quicker than the rest of you. The steps were on the wall. I read them and did them right then. Okay? I was in this program for 10 years, sober for 10 years, before I worked the steps. And I don't suggest doing that. But Patty, that was the lady's name that I made the agreement with. Patty was my sponsor for 7 years, and then she passed away. I looked for another Patty for 2 or 3 years, and I couldn't find one, and I finally asked a man named Dave Smith if he would be my sponsor. And what Patty gave me, guys, was love. And she taught me that God doesn't care what you call him. And by that, I was in the meetings, and I'm brought up in the Southern Baptist Church, and people in the meetings talking about they pray to a rock or they pray to the moon, and somebody prayed to a mop in the corner. And I went to Patty, I said, man, that's blasphemy. These people are going to go to hell. And Patty taught me that God doesn't care what you call him. And that I could have a relationship with God as I understand him. And it did not have to be like Patty's or like my mother's or like the Baptist church. And over the years, I don't even try and figure out a concept for what God is. I have a consciousness that the power works. And anyway, so Patty passed away. I've got Dave Smith as a sponsor. And I worked the steps with Dave, and doing a fourth and fifth step was incredibly freeing for me. Everybody always talks about, oh my God, there's fear around doing the fourth and fifth step, and just don't listen to that. It's freeing. It let me look at my part in things. Let me look at why I believe I drank and used. And the eighth and ninth step, oh my God, magic happens around that. There was a guy who burglarized homes in L.A. And he got sober. And he went back to these homes that he had burglarized and made amends to the people that lived there. And he was at his last one. And he said he was full of fear. But he wanted to be free. So he went up and he knocked on the door, and a little old woman answered the door, and he said, "Did you live here in such and such a time?" "Yes." "Was your home burglarized at that time?" "Yes." And he goes, I'm the guy that did it. And I'm here to try and make it right. And she invited him in. And he sat down with she and her husband. And they asked him a lot of questions that only the guy that burglarized that home would know the answer to. And when they were done, he looked at them and said, "Is there anything I can do to help right the wrong I have done to you?" And they looked at him and said, "You've already done it. Because until today, we thought our son did that." I mean, see that, guys? I mean, not drinking and not using, that's just a little bitty piece of this program. I mean, that's our entrance fee that we pay to get in here. You know, I was worried if I was going to be able to fill the time tonight. Hell, I could keep you here till 10 if Kurt let me, but I'm sure he won't. Okay, I'm going to jump forward. I'm like 20. Well, let me tell you. I'm 17 years sober. And we had our second child. Our first child was born, and they laid him on Mom's chest and taught him how to breastfeed. He was born at 7:30 in the morning. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we were on our way home. Our second child, he was born on a gurney outside the emergency room with the cord wrapped around his neck. He had aspirated meconium. He had a hole in his lung and a hole in his heart. They did not put him on Mom's chest. Took him to ICU. And the doctor told me it's probably going to get worse before it gets better. Lori and I were involved in a Roundup workshop. I called back over to the workshop and told them what was happening. Diana Erickson was running it. And I didn't know this, but there was 160 people in this workshop, alcoholics. Stopped the workshop, and 160 people, 160 alcoholics, prayed for my little boy. And he started getting better. He started getting better. He started getting better. And today's an incredible, incredible kid. And I believe, and I'll tell you, I was sitting in ICU, and I think that's the first time I ever felt complete powerlessness. And my thinking was, I don't want to get to know that little boy, because he's not going to make it. And I don't want to get hurt. And then I started thinking, man, I was 50 years old, okay? And I was thinking, can we have another kid? And they wound up airlifting him to a neonatal intensive care, which he was there 2 or 3 days, and then we took him home. But when they came to get him, they brought this thing in to put him in. Looked like an iron lung, you know. I mean, there's this huge thing. They put that little bitty boy in there. And I was afraid. I did not want to walk over there. And then I said, I've got to. You know, I'm his daddy. And there was a hole in the thing where you could reach in there. And I put my finger in there. And that little boy squeezed my finger, like to let me know that it's going to be okay. I mean, that's the type of stuff that happens, man, around this program. I'm 24 years sober. I build custom homes. And I built really nice custom homes, but the bottom fell out of the market. And some other things happened, and we had to, what happened is we had to file bankruptcy at 24 years sober. Lost our house, lost our car, lost my job. I couldn't get a job. And Lori was a dental assistant, and she got a job right away, but I couldn't get one. And I would go down to my friend Marijuana Mike's office. He was that old guy that came rambling in here late a while ago. I would go down to Mike's office, and I'd take donuts over there about 8 o'clock in the morning after I'd taken the kids to school and after Lori had gone to work. And Mike and I'd sit there and eat donuts. And then I'd leave and I would go home and I would sit in my house with the curtains drawn. Full of fear. I'm Mark. I'm a custom home builder. And I'm losing my business. I lost my home. And I can't buy my kids a pair of shoes. And I can't even afford used tires for my truck. And I'm telling you, there's too many things. I got to back up here. God, I can turn over damn near everything to God. There's a couple things that God takes too long with. One is money, and the other one is women. And I was involved with this girl who broke up with me and went back to her old boyfriend, and it devastated me, that not good enough really came out. So I'm praying to God to put the right woman in my life. And God, I'll give you the phone number and her address so it'll help you out a little bit. And I told this guy that had 33 years what I was doing. And, at the time I had, 5 or 6 years. And he asked me if I thought God was a pimp. And what he told me was, why don't you try praying for God to mold you into the man who will attract the woman he has in mind for you? Why don't you try that? Because I can't work on you. I can only work on me, man. And I didn't meet Lori right away. It was probably a couple years before we met. And then we were just friends for a year. And then that changed. And not only were we just friends, we were best friends. And then I got to marry my best friend, and now that's 25 years we've been married. So when the building business, I'm going to tell this, then I'm going to quit. I was building the nicest home I ever built. And the guy I was building it for was an incredible man. And I did a lot of bad business too, okay? Everything just came together, and I had to tell people that I can't finish their job. And I had to go to this guy and tell him, not only can I not finish your job, I can't even finish what you've already paid me to do. Can't do it. And it was right before Christmas. And when I left there, he handed me 5 $100 bills. And I said, "What's this for?" And he says, "I want you and Lori and the kids to make sure you have a Christmas." For the next 4 or 5 months till I got a job, that guy would take me out to lunch at least once a month. I think he did it 5 times. And he'd pay for lunch, and he'd hand me 5 $100 bills. And this guy got hurt for about $50,000, okay? And things happened, and we started another business, and we got to where we're making money. And I got a hold of him, and I said, "I want to set up a payment program with you. I want to pay you back." And he says, "I don't want that." He goes, "I may want to build another house one of these days. And if I do, I want you to help me." Well, 8 years goes by. And he had me go look at some property he was interested in. And then I got to help design a home for him. And then I got to be the project manager, so to speak. And we built an incredible home for this guy. And he got me and he said, "We got to talk about what you're going to make here." I said, I'm not going to make anything. I've already told you that. Well, we need to talk about it. And I said, "Well, it's not going to be a very long conversation." And I got to build him a home for fun and for free. And what's happened, not only did I get to, and I got to pay him back more. From what I did for him, it was worth more than he got hurt for. But not only did I get to do that, but today that guy and I are incredible friends. Incredible friends. And when we got his house done, we had so much fun doing it, we're doing another one. And he told me, he goes, "Hey, when we go to split the profit here," he goes, "I want you to take 60% and I'll take 40%. And I said, "Why?" He goes, "Because of everything you did for me on my house." And that was because of amends, guys. That stuff happens here. You know, it doesn't happen here because I think of it. It happens here because there's that power that is way bigger than me, way bigger than you. I mean, I am a blackout drinker and a burnout cocaine addict. And I get to live an incredible life today. Have two boys that are just incredible kids, incredible gifts from, once again, from this program. And I'm going to have to owe you guys handshakes and hugs because I'm not going to do that tonight, okay? You know, we've heard all this crap about coronavirus, and I'm in the age they keep telling you to be careful, you know. And I go, fuck, you know, how did I get to be that damn old? But anyway, I thank you for letting me come here and share. I had a lot of fun, and thanks.
Thank you. This has been a regular meeting of the Riley Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. You are cordially invited to join us again next week. Please bring a friend. There are approximately 100 meetings of AA each week in the Prescott area. We advise you that you attend as many as possible, and we hope that you will join us again soon. After the prayer, will the people who volunteered to do stuff do that stuff, and your court cards are on the back table.